Welcome to a presentation from the Nevada Department of Education. The Nevada Digital Learning Collaborative is glad to bring you the Planning with Digital in Mind video series, which is designed to provide valuable insights for adopting blended personalized learning. This is the fourth of 5 episodes in the series. The Nevada Department of Education is committed to making the transition to digital learning smooth for all. The Department of Education places Nevada's students at the center of every decision they make. They are truly committed to seeing that all students succeed. Today, on behalf of the Nevada Department of Education, Kim Loomis will be presenting Student Engagement, Blend with Habits in Mind. Welcome, I'm Kim Loomis. I have worked in the field of digital learning since 1999. I have over 20 years in the online and blended school setting, from teaching, designing digital content, professional development, and virtual school administration, to managing systems and processes for growing classrooms of the future. Let's get started. Before we jump into today's topic, let's define blended personalized learning. Sure, there's a formal definition with multiple parts, as defined by research conducted by the Christensen Institute, but let's keep it simple. Blended learning takes the best of online learning and matches it with the best of face-to-face instruction. Think about the best of online learning. It's always available. It can be accessed anywhere. You get immediate feedback. Students can pick up where they left off. The data is rich and thick on each and every student. Think about the best of face-to-face classroom instruction. In the classroom, it is easy to read students' faces and notice if a student is not feeling well or had a bad night. We love seeing smiles and building relationships with our students. We have the ability to organize small learning groups for peer-to-peer engagement and hands-on activities. Being a former high school mathematics teacher, I like to represent things in simple math terms. Blended personalized learning is taking the wisdom of classroom teachers plus the intelligence of technology to add up to a personalized learning space for each and every student. Note the 3 icons: a teacher, a computer, and a student. They are the foundation of blended personalized learning. Keep these 3 elements in mind as we move forward. Now, don't get me wrong when I say the intelligence of technology, because it's really not that smart. It's just a bunch of zeros and ones, making it very easy to check answers and adjust a learning path. But it's also not taking home papers to grade over the weekend. As for the teacher, your wisdom is so deep about instructional pedagogy, so much so that many of you have a master's degree. And we should never take the caring heart of the teacher for granted. As we kick off, it's important that we remember to focus on the core business of schools: relationships and learning. Even with the addition of digital content and technology as a tool for learning, we should never take the heart of the classroom teacher out of the learning process. Students' relationships with their teacher have an important, positive, and long-lasting implications for both academic and social development. Positive teacher-student relationships draw students into the process of learning and promote their desire to learn. As for the learning, maintaining high-quality academic instruction creates opportunities for thinking and analysis, using feedbacks effectively to guide students' thinking and extend students' prior knowledge. When a student trusts that the teacher has their best interest at heart, they tend to be more engaged in the learning, behave better in class, and strive to obtain higher academic levels. Let us not forget peer-to-peer relations and opportunities for collaboration and communication among classmates. Picture a student who feels a strong personal connection to their classmates. They talk frequently using academic vocabulary and receive construction feedback and praise from each other. That's the power of relationships and learning. When we think about learning, we need to look at its underpinning structure. The foundation of every classroom is CIA: curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Just like a traditional classroom, blended learning classrooms are driven by the same 3 CIA elements, yet with unique qualifiers: digital curriculum, guided instruction, authentic assessment. Imagine data every time a student interacts with curriculum in an easy-to-read and digestible format. That is the strength of blended personalized learning, where the digital curriculum delivers content requiring less stand-and-deliver instructional methods, providing teachers with time to analyze student achievement results and guide classroom instruction in large and small groups, or working individually with students. And since there will be a traditional assessment in the digital curriculum as well as in the classroom instruction, in the blended classroom, filled with digital tools, students can stretch their thinking into authentic assessments, which require deep analysis, synthesis, creation, and peer-to-peer collaboration. The CIA of blended learning can be represented by a triple Venn diagram, where each circle represents one element. In this diagram, icons are used to provide a visual cue for each CIA element: a computer for digital curriculum, a teacher for guided instruction, and a student for authentic assessment, each representing 1/3 of the equation. To learn more about the CIA of blended learning, check out the Nevada Digital Collaborative video in this series titled A Balanced Approach, the CIA of Blended. We often hear the question, is blended learning actually effective in the K-12 classroom? The short answer is yes, or it can be. But the longer answer is that this is the wrong question to ask. No one would ask, is learning in the K-12 classroom actually effective? While the modality or environment in which learning takes place is important to providing us with different opportunities for teaching, what we do in these environments has a much more direct impact on student learning. As we look for effective instructional design, consider the interplay of the 3 M's: medium, modality, and method. Medium are the tools we use to teach our students, such as tablets, laptops, textbooks, and whiteboards. Modality is the characteristics that affect the learning experience, such as the physical learning environment, classroom size, desks, or tables. Method is the teaching strategies and pedagogies used when teaching, such as lecture, demonstration, discussions, group work, workshops, hands-on manipulatives, or scientific inquiry. These will vary based on the skills and techniques of the teacher. A learning experience is affected by all 3 M's, the medium, modality, and method. Yet research tells us that the M's are not equal in importance. Method is the most important of the 3 M's and has a direct impact on student learning. A great teacher can overcome low-quality mediums and modalities. What matters most is the skill or the methods of the classroom teacher. It is the skilled methods of the teacher that directly impact student learning, and not the physical classroom modality or technology medium itself. Medium and modality are still important, but have an indirect impact on student learning because they affect the kinds of method that a teacher can use. Blended personalized learning would be difficult with limited technology and digital content. So we need to ask better questions. What are students doing on the laptops? What are they doing in group work? Are the instructional strategies making the learning effective or ineffective? What can I, as a teacher, do to teach effectively in a blended, personalized learning environment? Today, we will be talking a lot about teaching strategies and pedagogies to help your adoption of blended personalized learning and balancing the elements within the CIA, a computer for digital curriculum, a teacher for guided instruction, and a student for authentic assessment. Throughout this session, several peer-to-peer activities will be shared. Also, we will examine habits we need to build in our students as we look to release control to them. Today we will focus our attention on the student. The goal is to help teachers design effective learning environments that are actively engaging, where students can take ownership in their own learning, beyond the data of the digital content. Keeping with our 1/3 balance of CIA, Teachers must craft learning experiences that put students at the center of the learning 1/3 of the time. Teachers can encourage student-centered learning by allowing students to share in decisions, believing in their capacity to lead, and remembering how it feels to learn. Student-centered classrooms include students in planning, implementation, and assessment. Involving the learners in these decisions will place more responsibility on our students, allowing us to feel comfortable releasing the learning to our students. Please know that student-centered learning starts with the educator. Let's begin by looking at the student component of the CIA of blended learning. Authentic assessment goes beyond the simple skills-based assessments within most digital curriculum or the classroom tests and quizzes by focusing on skills that are needed to be successful in college, career, and citizenship. Authentic assessments calls upon the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Ideally, this is a time to design active engagement learning opportunities that require peer-to-peer interaction, which will also work towards building on skills needed in the world outside of school, such as teamwork, problem solving, flexibility, initiative, social responsibility, and leadership. Think about how you can build in fun, engaging peer-to-peer activities, even at low-level DOKs, such as quiz trade with vocabulary, skills, or concept cards. With technology at students' fingertips, collaboration and communication is easy, and creation should entail critical thinking in a fun and active way. In blended classroom, students should be using technology not only to learn, but to create works that demonstrate learning too. This is also a time to use performance tasks and projects, requiring students to be critical and creative thinkers, and working together in collaborative groups, utilizing academic language to communicate their understanding. Through authentic assessment, students demonstrate their knowledge with real-world applications, going beyond rote skill-based mastery into deep thinking and analysis and communication, pushing students to the top of Bloom's taxonomy and into depth of knowledges 3 and 4, strategic and extended thinking. The 4 C's are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. All 4 of these items are essential in the classroom, as all of these skills are also timeless and highly valued not only inside the classroom, but in all professions. Communication is about sharing thoughts, questions, ideas, and solutions. Without effective communication, there's no way to get anything done inside the classroom or anywhere else for that matter. Peer-to-peer communication allows students to assess academic vocabulary and digest the learning, making it their own. In the technological world, communication outside the classroom is much easier with email and conferencing tools. Technology has provided us with more convenient ways to communicate with other classrooms across the state, nation, or world, as well as host discussions with book authors and other experts. Collaboration is about working together to reach a goal and putting talent, expertise, and smarts to work. Collaboration is the practice of working together to achieve a common goal. Collaboration is important because whether students realize it or not, they'll probably work with other people for the rest of their lives. Virtually every job requires somebody to work with another person at some point, even if it's for something as simple as, "What are you going to do for lunch?" Practicing collaboration and teamwork helps students understand how to address a problem, pitch solutions, and decide the best course of action. Just like with communication, technology has made collaboration easier. As the world gets more interconnected, collaboration will become more and more of an essential skill than it already is for college, careers, and citizenship. Critical thinking is looking at problems in a new way and linking learning across subjects and disciplines. Just like the previous 2 ideas, critical thinking has been an essential skill in every century and profession. Critical thinking is the practice of solving problems, working through problems, solving puzzles, and similar activities. Critical thinking also includes an element of skepticism. Critical thinking empowers students to discover the truth in assertions, especially when it comes to separating fact from opinion. With critical thinking, students don't just learn a set of facts or figures. Instead, they learn how to discover the facts and figures for themselves. They ask questions. They become engaged in the world around them. They help others think critically too. Through the skills, students learn to ask why and seek answers, which prepares them for independence and purposeful thought that will last a lifetime. Creativity is trying new approaches to get things done through innovation and invention. Creativity is the practice of thinking outside the box. While creativity is often treated like a you have it or you don't quality, students can learn how to be creative in problem solving and creating systems or just trying something new. Creativity asks students to look at a problem from multiple perspectives, including those that others have not seen. It allows students to embrace their inner strengths, from big picture planning to meticulous organization. With technology at students' fingertips, not only are the traditional ways of creativity still available, but there are tons of new possibilities. Instead of just painting a picture, you can animate it or arrange a piece of music on a computer without ever learning how to play an instrument. If we were in a classroom, an engagement activity called Four Corners could be utilized by an instructor to release the learning to students. The four-corner strategy is an approach that asks students to make a decision about a problem or question. Each of the four corners of the classroom would be labeled by a different response. For example, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. The instructor would generate a list of debatable statements that do not have one correct or obvious answer. Since we just addressed the four C's, participants could be asked how they feel about adding a fifth C, coding, as others have suggested in today's highly technical world. They would then move to the appropriate corner, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree, to discuss with their peers their thoughts. Or the corners could have been labeled with the four C's, and participants could have been asked to select the corner that they feel is most important. Once in the corner of the four C's, participants would discuss why they selected it over the other C's. In the K-12 classroom, the teacher might pre-distribute statements and give students the opportunity to respond to these in writing before the activity, allowing students to create a rationale for their thoughts and to provide talking points as they move among the corners. By having students orally share one by one, they might possibly encourage others to switch corners if the ideas presented caused a change of mind. This technique stimulates student learning through movement and discussion. Students are presented with a statement or asked a question in which they must express their opinion. Then they talk to others, justifying their thoughts and processes. The four corners promotes listening, verbal communication, critical thinking, and decision making. When releasing to students, we must develop aptitudes that will help them be successful in a student-centered learning environment. Remember to blend with habits in mind. Let's take a moment to look at 2 habits to keep in mind. Flexibility in the classroom is one of the most important qualities that every student must possess. Receiving feedback from peers and teachers can be rather intimidating. And then changing your plans in order to accommodate their feedbacks and criticism may seem like a daunting task, and it is. Mentally flexible people have an expansive way of perceiving the world. A flexible mindset can lead to better problem solving, enhanced creativity, and less suffering after setbacks. Develop mental flexibility by overriding a fixed mindset and focusing on developing a growth mindset in your students. A growth mindset is simply the belief that our basic abilities can be developed and improved through dedication and hard work. It's not so much that this belief is some kind of magic, it's just that without growth mindset, we don't exert the required effort, and so we remain perpetually stuck.
Adaptability encompasses a person's ability to adjust, to change in their environment. Being adaptable means working without boundaries and being open to finding diverse and unexpected solutions to problems and challenges. It calls on the ability to respond quickly, to change responsibilities, expectations, as well as ideas. Being adaptable is important when working in teams and on joint projects. Someone who is adaptable is willing to engage with a variety of people with diverse ideas, thoughts, and skills. Develop adaptability in students by helping them feel comfortable asking questions. Help them reflect and learn from their mistakes with an openness to learn from others. Adaptability also helps develop interpersonal, communication, creative thinking, and problem-solving skills. As we rethink instructional design, let's take a moment to think about knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs. The acronym comes from the workforce. KSAs are the attributes required to perform a job and are generally demonstrated through qualifying service, education, or training. Typically, they are detailed lists of qualifications that a person needs to perform a specific job created by an employer. One criticism of KSAs is that the three terms seem interchangeable or overlapping. However, they are distinctly different. Knowledge is the theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. It is the body of information, factual or procedural knowledge required for performance of a function. For example, someone might have read hundreds of articles on health and nutrition, but that doesn't make that person qualified to dispense advice on nutrition. Skills are the proficiencies developed through training and experiences. Skills are the practical applications of theoretical knowledge. Skills are usually something that has been learned. Skills are possible to teach, test, and measure. For example, someone can take a course in investing and therefore have knowledge of it, yet it's the experience in investing that creates skills. Most people understand skills and knowledge, but when it comes to abilities, that's often when the confusion arises. There is a fine line between skills and abilities. Abilities are natural or built in. These are qualities or features regarded as a characteristic or an inherent trait of someone. They are inside of all of us, such as oral comprehension and spatial orientation. Yet it takes experience to draw them out and fine-tune these abilities, whereas skills are learned behaviors. Most people would say the differentiator is whether the thing in question was learned, like a skill, or innate talent or intelligence as an ability. For example, when cutting hair, you might have an ability to keep your hand steady or cut a straight line, but the skill is what you learned in your hairdressing course. Skills can be developed and improved over time by combining our abilities and our knowledge, but the underlying abilities are needed in order for the skills to be developed. Why is all this important? Because as teachers, we need to create learning experiences that will help students inside and outside the classroom. We are preparing the workforce of the future. It's the classroom learning environment and opportunities that educators create that mold a person's likelihood for success in college, career, and citizenship. Let's take a moment to look at a few examples to get a better idea of knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs, so we can create complementary learning experiences. We'll use a few examples of knowledge, skills, and abilities to help us get a better feel for what we as educators can do in the classroom to help our students. In 2017, Pearson conducted research and published a report titled The Future of Skills Employment in 2030, where they detailed KSAs that were likely to be in greater demand, including interpersonal skills, higher order cognitive skills, and systems thinking. They pointed to the action that educators, policymakers and individuals can take to better prepare themselves for the future. Listed here are a few examples from the report. Knowledge, in the light blue, is our typical course content such as chemistry and physics, but also includes career and technical courses like fine arts, design, and visualization. Skills, in orange, are learned, practiced, and may be measured. These are proficiencies developed through experience. Not given the experiences and training, they would never grow. This includes active listening, negotiation, and persuasion, all of which students develop in peer-to-peer or group work activities. As we look to create student ownership of their own learning, they will need situations where they can practice troubleshooting, judgment, and decision-making. We have all met people who cannot make a decision. Abilities in green are innate and found within each of us, but we need experiences that help them grow. We all have stamina and ideas, some more than others, but without experience to fine-tune our stamina and fluency of ideas, they will stay at low levels. Again, we all have mathematical reasoning and information ordering. It's innate within all of us, yet it is the classroom experiences with numbers, patterns, and collection of information that allows us to fine-tune and hone these abilities. Abilities are those enduring talents that can help a person well into the workforce and life in general. Teachers must create learning experiences that help students develop knowledge and skills and fine-tune innate abilities. We set the stage for our students' future. The classroom learning environment and opportunities that educators create mold a person's likelihood for success in college, career, and citizenship. If we were in the classroom, an engagement activity called Carousel Brainstorm could be utilized by an instructor to release the learning to students. To help participants understand and reflect on knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs, that we just covered, the student could create one-page brief biographies with photos of a select few Time magazine's most influential teens. Each of these would be placed on a large poster paper around the room, where the student groups would rotate among to identify the knowledge, skills, and abilities that teen must have had to be successful. Groups of 3 or 4 would be assigned to a different colored marker. At the assigned poster, they would discuss and make notes on the chart paper. After a few minutes, each group rotates to the next station, where they add on to the notes from the previous group. Depending on time, all groups would hit each poster, or the class could end with a gallery walk to see what other biographies and thoughts were recorded. This activity requires teamwork and time management while allowing participants to communicate, collaborate, reflect, and take ownership on the learning. When releasing control to students, we must develop aptitudes that will help them be successful in student-centered learning environments. Remember to blend with habits in mind. Let's take a moment to look at 2 more habits to keep in mind. The importance of teamwork cannot be stressed enough. The importance of teamwork is essential in today's multicultural world. Teams need strong team players to perform well. If you're a motivated person, it's easy to put your personal goals ahead of those of the people around you. It's natural and not necessarily a bad thing. However, it is crucial to learn to be a team player. Acting as a part of a team builds character, teaches empathy, and ultimately achieves goals. All of these things, in turn, are integral to one's personal success. Teachers need to help students understand how good teams operate and then create environments that allow students to develop skills that work, no matter the team's composition. In order for this to happen, students will have to engage in and reflect on a variety of collaborative experiences in the classroom. Learning to work as part of a team will help students hone many social skills such as patience, empathy, communication, respect for others, compromise, and tolerance. It also helps them to develop confidence in themselves and to trust in other people. Being responsible means doing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done. It means setting priorities and taking action on them. Start by accepting the fact that students desperately want to be responsible and self-disciplined. The natural state is to be curious, connect with others, grow, and succeed. When students appear to lack personal responsibility or self-discipline, provide feedback and reflection to address issues constructively. It's important for teachers to provide opportunities for students to take responsibility for learning. Build responsibility through goal setting, within learning activities, and via progress monitoring. In a classroom that is focused on student achievement, incorporate goal setting, choices, and self-direction to help students learn and grow. Remind students that being responsible also means we learn to manage our time in order to accomplish goals. Help students understand that personal responsibility means having the strength to make the right choice when faced with a challenge. No blaming, no complaining. Each step taken towards being responsible and productive helps raise self-esteem. Have you ever gone to a staff meeting and not paid attention, graded homework, had private conversations, or text during the meeting? Well, kids aren't much different than adults. If they aren't engaged, they'll find something else that interests them. Getting all your students focused, eager, and on task is challenging enough. Worse is watching them zone out. Anyone who has had to sit through a long routine, including a teacher's presentation, is bound to drift at some point. When students let their minds drift off, we're losing valuable learning time. I'm sure you've seen a figure like this before. It's often called the learning pyramid or the cone of learning. It dates back to 1969 by educator Edgar Dale. We all know that when we are actively engaged in something, there's a far greater chance of retaining the learning. The goal is to make the learning experience memorable. Here's what we know. 1. The more students are engaged in the curriculum, the better the retention. 2. Expertise is developed through deep understanding and when it is personally meaningful. 3. Learning is optimized when students develop metacognition strategies and think about their own thinking. The premise of the model illustrates how much understanding a person retains depending on which senses are involved in the learning process. So what does this mean in the classroom? Engage kids. Get them thinking about how they think and make the learning real for them so that they can take ownership of their learning and crave more. Using active learning teaching techniques can lead to more effective, gratifying, and memorable learning outcomes. Active learning includes instructional strategies in which students are involved. They are committed into body and mind. It is any approach of instruction in which students are asked to engage in the learning process and stands to contrast to traditional modes of instruction in which students are passive recipients of knowledge from an expert. Active learning can take many forms. Commonly, students can engage in small or large activities centered around writing, talking, problem solving, or reflecting. Active learning refers to a broad range of teaching strategies which engage students as active participants in their learning during class time. Typically, these strategies involve students working together during class, but may also involve individual work or reflection. These teaching approaches range from short, simple activities like paired discussions to longer involved activities like Socratic seminars, open-ended or document-based questions, conducting research on areas of personal interest, and may involve collaborative teamwork with higher-order thinking skills, such as hands-on performance tasks or projects. As you look to create opportunities for students' ownership and active engagement, think about how you can add peer-to-peer activities, teamwork, and more to put students in the driver's seat. Like the saying goes, I see and I forget, I hear and I remember, I do and I understand. If we were in a classroom, an engagement activity called back-to-back, face-to-face, could be utilized by an instructor to release the learning to students. When considering the addition of active engagement strategies into the blended classroom, the instructor could use thought-provoking conversations. Students could start by raising their hand, indicating they're available and welcome a partner. Students then stand back to back. The teacher would pose a question to think about, such as, why is peer-to-peer engagement activities important? Students are given time to reflect and collect their thoughts. Then the instructor asks pairs to turn to face. Taking turns, paired partners share their thoughts. Pairs thank each other, raise their hands, and sync other partners. This mix and mingle opportunity allows students to communicate, collaborate, reflect, and take ownership of the learning. When releasing control to our students, we must develop aptitudes that will help them be successful in student-centered learning environments. Remember to blend with habits in mind. Let's take a moment to look at 2 more habits to keep in mind. Culture is what shapes us. It shapes our identity, influences our behavior. Culture is our way of being. More specifically, it refers to shared language, belief, values, norms, and behavior. In general, most students are more comfortable interacting with people, behaviors, and ideas that they are familiar with, but react with fear and apprehension when faced with the unfamiliar. In a typical educational or social setting, there is a marked tendency for students to exhibit classic in-group, out-of-group behaviors. A primary goal of culturally responsive education is to help all students become respectful of the multitudes of cultures and people that they'll interact with once they exit the educational setting. There are a wide range of classroom activities that can help students recognize the essential humanity and value of different types of people. For example, providing students with an opportunity to share stories of their culture can provide fellow students with a window into their peers' world. Teach students to respect and appreciate their own culture and heritage. Some students may feel pressured to dispose of their cultural norms, behaviors, and traditions in order to fit in with peer social order. Don't let that happen in your classroom. Accept and celebrate our differences. Leadership starts with being a leader of oneself. Leadership means knowing your own values and being able to translate that into a vision for yourself. Leadership skills allow students to have control of their lives and the ability to make things happen. Leadership instills confidence and helps students solve problems creatively, work in teams, and work collaboratively with others. Teach students how to see things from another's point of view. Good communication and being open-minded to different ideas and values are key components of being an effective leader. Teach students how to listen carefully and how to respond to others in calm and respectful ways. Leadership gives students many opportunities to develop responsibility. Teaching students how to be a leader at a young age will help them deal with peer pressure. Leadership skills will help prepare the next generation to take the lead as they become responsible adults. When looking for student engagement activities, check out Mark Drollinger's Teaching Protocols video playlist found on YouTube. Mark has created and compiled over 20 different strategies in short, easy-to-digest video clips. Several of his activities were shared in this presentation. A tiny URL was created for ease of access. Note the dash and no capitals. It's tiny.url/active-learning. The clips are so easy to understand. They can be shared with students to set the stage for activities like World Cafe, Rally Coach, and Numbered Heads. Find a handful that you can incorporate into your classroom. Use them over and over again to engage students in the learning process. Students will enjoy being actively engaged and remember the learning when you allow them to take ownership. And with ownership comes great responsibility. Thus, we need to blend with habits in mind. And outcome-based learning environments, we generally see 3 elements come into play: curriculum standards, instruction, and assessment, or CIA. But what is lost are the habits of mind that often leads to success or failure in the mastery of the given standards. In fact, it is not the standards or the assessment, but rather these personal habits where success or failure in academic term really begins. The 16 Habits of Mind by Art Costa and Benna Kalick are not practices to add on to what teachers already do, but rather should be considered new ways to think about how people learn. Thus, educators need to consider where and how they can design instruction that fosters these habits. The habits of mind are an identified set of 16 problem-solving, life-related skills necessary to effectively operate in society and promote strategic reasoning, insightfulness, persuasive, creativity, and craftsmanship. Understanding the application of these 16 habits of mind serve to provide an individual with skills to work through real-life situations that equip that person to respond using awareness cues, thought, and intentional strategies in order to gain a positive outcome. 16 habits are a lot. I get it. So I challenge you to identify a handful, say 3 to 5, that you want to focus on and develop in your students. Then find a way to integrate a few of those habits into your classroom. Here's a couple of my favorites. Number 1, persisting, which means sticking to a task until it is completed. Students with persistence or grit don't give up easily. They are able to analyze a problem, to develop a system, a structure, or strategy to attack it. If one strategy doesn't work, they know how to back up and try another. Number 2, managing impulsivity, which means thinking before acting. Reflective individuals consider alternatives and consequences of several possible directions prior to taking action. They decrease their need for trial and error by gathering information and taking time to reflect before jumping in. Number 4, thinking flexibly, which means having the capacity to change one's mind as they receive additional data. Flexible thinkers consider alternative points of view and can deal with several sources of information simultaneously. They typically display confidence in their intuition and can tolerate confusion and ambiguity up to a point. Flexibility is the cradle of humor, creativity, and rapport. Number 15, thinking interdependently, which draws on our human social being qualities. Cooperative humans realize that all of us together are more powerful intellectually and/or physically than any one individual. Number 16, remain open to continuous learning, which means always striving for improvement, growing, and learning. People who remain open to continuous learning seize problems, situations, tensions, conflicts, and circumstances as valuable opportunities to learn. Basically, these 5 habits tell students to stick to it, take your time, look at it another way, work together, and learn from experience. All great traits that I would hope for all students. Now comes the difficult part. Designing instructional learning environments where students can practice and fine-tune them. Developing the 16 habits of mind can begin in early grades through stories. Primary teachers might want to check out the ASCD Habits of Mind video playlist on YouTube. If we were in a classroom, an engagement activity called Quiz Quiz Trade could be utilized by an instructor to release the learning to students. With over 20 engagement activities and 16 habits of mind, the instructor could generate open-ended questions on when you might use one of the activities in your classrooms or how you could develop one of the 16 habits in your students. 32 cards could be distributed among the class. Students raise their hand indicating they are available and welcome a partner. Taking turns, paired partners pose these questions to one another. Before thanking each other, they exchange cards, raise their hands, and seek another partner. This mix and mingle opportunity allows participants to communicate, collaborate, reflect, and take ownership of the learning. When releasing control to our students, we must develop aptitudes that will help them be successful in student learning environments. Remember to blend with habits in mind. Let's take a moment to look at 2 more habits to keep in mind. Learning to take initiative is a behavior that helps students navigate their lives with courage and optimism. Students must learn to take initiative, and teachers must be willing to create a learning environment where initiative is rewarded and praised. Communicate to students that innovation and problem solving are welcomed in the classroom. Challenge students to use their intelligence and trust them to manage their own learning. Sometimes strict rules and micromanaging can send a very different signal. For students to learn to take initiative, they need to know that if they fail, there will not be repercussions. Matter of fact, celebrate the initiative and ask them to reflect on the process. Provide a positive, encouraging environment and expect the best. Providing positive, constructive feedback when failure occurs will help to build confidence and encourage a willingness to try again. Remember, no one has ever succeeded without failing first. Persisting means sticking to a task until it is completed. Students with persistence or grit doesn't give up easily. They're able to analyze a problem to develop a system, structure, or strategy to attack it. If one strategy doesn't work, they know how to back up and try another. Persistence is evidenced by willingness to continue to try in the face of challenge. For students, persistence can be a driving force to help them achieve their academic as well as their personal goals. Ask students what they are good at, and you will find that they persisted and practiced a lot before becoming successful. Use this analogy to help students understand why having grit and continued practice in the classroom are important to be successful academically as well. Students are more likely to persist in productive ways when teachers allow time for reflection and discussion, when assignments and tests include opportunity for error analysis, when teachers use questioning to uncover confusion as opposed to giving a right answer right away, when teachers assign tasks that have clear outcomes and rubrics so students can self-assess, when teachers praise effort as opposed to outcome, when teachers foster a community of learners in their classroom, and when teachers push students to honestly evaluate their struggles and their attributions to success and failure. Help students develop the skills to see learning as a lifelong process. Think back to the CIA of blended learning triple Venn diagram: digital curriculum, guided instruction, and authentic assessment. The 3 overlapping circles with the 3 icons: a computer, a teacher, and a student, which are the 3 key ingredients of blended personalized learning. Ideally, we're looking to reach the sweet spot in the middle. This is where the blended learning classroom has an approach and a solid foundation in all 3 CIA components of blended. Let the digital curriculum do what it does best: deliver low-level knowledge at DOK levels 1 and 2. The strength of blended personalized learning is allowing digital curriculum to deliver some content, requiring less stand and deliver instructional methods, providing teachers with time to analyze student achievement results and guide classroom instruction in large and small groups, or working individually with students. Using standards and the wisdoms of the teacher, classroom instruction should span all 4 levels of Webb's depth of knowledge. Use data to guide instruction and push the learning through DOK levels 1 through 3 into strategic real-world applications and thinking. It's the responsibility of the blended teacher to create a learning environment that complements and extends the digital curriculum. Next, teachers need to design engaging activities ranging in DOK levels 1 through 4 that will extend the learning and stretch students by demonstrating mastery of concepts in creative, critical thinking, and collaborative ways, requiring students to embrace and take responsibility for their own learning, thus demonstrating mastery of concepts and skills. Blend with habits in mind. Think back to the knowledge, skills, and abilities, KSAs, students need for success in college, career, and citizenship. What activities can you utilize that will help students understand basic skills and knowledge through higher order thinking skills? Let your students take ownership of their learning. In doing so, you're building the traits that will help students for life. The three icons, a computer, a teacher, and a student, in the CIA of blended learning, remind us of the balance needed for a pedagogy shift to blended, personalized learning. This is where the teacher partners with digital curriculum so that they can guide instruction with higher depths of knowledge, and students can take ownership in their learning while engaging in authentic assessment. Think in thirds, plan in thirds. 1/3 digital curriculum, partnering with digital content to deliver low-level basic instruction, which in turn frees the teacher up to provide more one-on-one and small group support. 1/3 guided instruction, utilizing the wisdom of teachers to ensure that the students grasp the appropriate depth of knowledge of the essential and power standards, moving beyond DOK level 1 and 2 into strategic thinking, which includes whole and small group instruction, as well as crafting thought-provoking peer-to-peer active engagement experiences. 1/3 authentic assessment and student ownership. Move beyond traditional quizzes and tests. Embrace peer-to-peer experiences within the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. This may also include performance tasks and projects. Today we explored active engagement strategies and blending with habits in mind. Teachers must look for creative ways to release instruction to students. Creating a student-centered blended learning environment will take a pedagogy shift, one that thinks in thirds: 1/3 digital, 1/3 teacher, and 1/3 student. So you may be asking, how do you plan for blended personalized learning environments? It starts with understanding that if you, the teacher, will lead 1/3 of the time, that means 2/3 of the time you will release control to technology and/or your students. So we need to design instructional learning experiences that create quality habits in our students. Guided instruction is knowing when to release the learning to your digital partner and your students. It's about designing learning opportunities that embrace a wide range of depth of knowledge. It is the teacher's responsibility to ensure that standards are being met at the appropriate levels. They need to look for opportunities within the standards to create a balanced and actively engaged blended classroom. When using the CIA components for designing instruction, teachers should look at all 3 components and focus on units of instructions rather than individual lessons. This will lay the groundwork for learning over time and ensure a 1/3 balance across the unit of study. It will be challenging to move from a single focused teacher delivery system to one that releases instruction to digital content partners for delivery of low-level basic learning opportunities. The payoff is the data that is gained for each student, as well as the whole class, which will help guide instruction and open opportunities for authentic assessment. Utilizing the content standards, wise teachers will ensure that the appropriate depth of knowledge is attended to, as well as guided classroom instruction in large, small, and one-on-one settings. Teacher guidance should include scaffolding the learning to help overcome misconceptions. The artful teacher will look to create learning environments that stretch and extend the learning, looking for areas when students can take the lead in their own learning. Releasing to students should start with helping them to understand their role in their own learning process. Begin by helping students understand the meaning of grit, persistence, and flexible thinking. Students will also need to be comfortable in posing questions, seeking answers, and taking responsibility in classrooms where failure is supported and recognized as part of the process. It will be important to build these and other habits of mind in our students as we release control with guided activities of collaboration, performance tasks, and projects. So, where do you start, you may be asking? When using the CIA components for designing instruction, teachers should look at all three components and focus on units of instruction rather than individual lessons. This will lay the groundwork for learning over time and ensure a 1/3 balance across the unit of study. It will be challenging to move from single-focused teacher delivery system to one that releases instruction to digital content partners for delivery of low-level basic learning opportunities. The payoff is the data that is gained for each student as well as the whole class, which will help guide instruction and open opportunities for authentic assessment. First, tackle the digital curriculum. Lesson planning in the blended learning classroom begins with knowing what is inside the digital curriculum so that the classroom teacher may complement it. Teachers need to preview the digital curriculum and identify what students will be expected to know and be able to do. There are too many blended classrooms where the teacher had no idea what was in the digital curriculum. This would be like planning without cracking the textbook or reviewing the standards and flying blind. If teachers do not know what's inside the digital curriculum, how can they predict where students will need support and guide instruction? Teachers cannot wait until students interact with the digital curriculum and the data sends up a red flag. Teachers need to plan ahead. Start with identifying what's inside the digital partner and identifying tasks students will be asked to complete. Remember, digital partners will only provide low-level DOK level 1 and 2. Move to guided instruction. Once teachers knows what's inside the digital curriculum, they can plan for guided instruction. They will need to identify prerequisite knowledge and where students will need scaffolding or fill in gaps related to prior knowledge. These topics can be used as class openers to set everyone up for success. Teachers also need to identify where students might have misconceptions or areas that could be troublesome. These topics would be ideal for class closure activities to reinforce the learning. Digital courseware activities like discussions and pre-test material can be done offline in small and large group settings. Remember, it's a blended classroom. Blend the instruction too. Teachers will also need to identify additional resources that can be used to teach material, especially for students who need to see it in multiple representations and require extra practice. Resources can be used in one-on-one or small group settings for struggling students. From intervention to strategic thinking, guided instruction will span DOK levels 1 through 3. Wrap up with identifying authentic assessment opportunities. Teachers need to look for engaging activities that will stretch students' critical thinking and demonstrate mastery of concepts in creative and collaborative ways. They should identify opportunities for peer-to-peer active engagement activities, performance tasks, and projects to expand and extend the learning. Peer-to-peer activities may start in low-level skill sets and extend into higher-order projects that expand thinking across DOK levels 1 through 4. Look to the standards for where instruction can be released to digital partners and where activities can be designed to extend the learning, allowing you to release to your students. Sure, there will be times when you must take the lead and conduct large and small group instruction to ensure that students are mastering standards at the appropriate depth of knowledge level. Use the standards and your wisdom to know when and where you can release the learning to technology and/or your students. This wraps up today's episode of Planning with Digital in Mind, which is the 4th of 5 in the series. Look for other episodes to continue learning about how to embrace the CIA of blended learning as you adopt a balanced approach in your classroom. Thank you for your time today. It has been a pleasure serving you. This presentation is available on the Nevada Department of Education's YouTube channel. Come back to it anytime, and please feel free to share it with your fellow educators.